Well, Boombox got a lot of changes, and it seems my guide is unfortunately outdated because of that. Pretty unfortunate since it is my most viewed video. Well, to be fair, my old guide had tons of issues that I could resolve much easier now. You know what? Just for Boombox, I'll make an updated guide on him, make it more refined, and make a guide that actually works for this update. Hello everyone, my name is Nico, and today we will be doing a guide of a character I have already done before. Why? Because our subject is the funny party starter himself, Boombox. Boombox has gotten a lot of changes since the original video, which is pretty surprising to me. So I'll use this video to much better explain Boombox and his whole kit for everyone. And with that being said, enjoy. Boombox is a support that functions as a weird hybrid of applying defensive and offensive approaches for his team. Having 100 HP and 50 shield might not seem like that much, especially for a support, but his skills can make use of this very well. With his charge mechanic and his ways of giving shield and haste to his teammates, Boombox can be a menace with his multi-purpose options to apply offensive pressure or hold a stable defensive core. Since Boombox can hold both things, he isn't really a master of one or the other, which can cause him to have weaknesses against tons of the fighters since he simply can't do one thing as well as other characters, which leads to his flaws. Overall, Boombox can apply both types of offensive and defensive aid, but this hybrid nature of him can lead to him lacking some tools for one side or the other. Boombox's passive, Charging Blitz, also known by many as the rhythm game, is the most defining feature of his entire kit. If you look in the middle of the screen, you see these bars close in onto open holes at the same bar while a metronome ticks in the background. Hit it at the right time and you get a perfect hit along with a 20% haste boost that lasts 1 second that can also apply to teammates. An early or late hit will be indicated by text near the bars and only give the charge. This is one of the biggest factors as to why Boombox isn't played often, due to this mechanic requiring constant focus on the middle of the screen and trying to adapt it in playing. There is no recommended or easy way of trying to get used to this passive other than practice that isn't too fun to do. But once you get a pattern going and have some strategy, you can easily get consistent with this passive and be able to get constant charges. Pulse Wave is Boombox's primary attack. It spawns a cone-shaped hitbox in front of Boombox and does only 6 damage. However, with every charge you have, another wave spawns if you get a perfect hit with the metronome and does an extra 2 damage. So for example, if you have 2 charges and get a perfect hit, you get 3 waves and 10 damage. If you get 3 charges and get a perfect hit, you get 4 waves and 12 damage, and so on with every subsequent charge up to 4, which can make his primary attack boost in power. Combined with the haste with a perfect timing, Boombox can barely close the gap on other fighters and sometimes chase down weakened fighters. Shielding Amplifier is Boombox's secondary and gives shield and haste to Boombox and teammates around him. The shield is calculated by using 10 plus the amount of charges multiplied by 10, so with 4 charges, you could give back 50 shield. However, Boombox only gets a calculation of 10 base shield with charges multiplied by 5, so if Boombox used it with 4 charges, he only gets back 30 shield. Haste is calculated the same way, but just without the base amount of 10. The attack comes out in a circle hitbox and does fairly little damage but has good range, and thanks to its capabilities giving shield back to teammates and haste for a few seconds, it can be effective for rushdowns or simply giving teammates more bulk. Boombox's Q is Base Boost, which launches Boombox into the air in which he can slowly hover. The hover can be affected by speed changes like Boombox's secondary, but it's naturally slow. It could also suck in nearby opponents closer with a small hitbox and do small damage to them. Pressing Q again in this form does Beat Drop, which does a slam attack that does damage and pushes opponents slightly away. It's good for general damage, comboing after your secondary, or finishing opponents off as the air you get from base boost makes you hard to hit and lots of vertical mobility, and the damage does makes it an okay move. You can also do a tech called Q surfing, in which you do the beat drop part of your Q on a slope. Right now, it's only practical on maps like Iron Cafe and Bandlands since their slopes have weird properties, but it is a cool piece of tech nonetheless. Boombox's E is Protecting Overtone. It spawns a force field with 300 HP that stands in front of Boombox that can take general projectiles if it hits them. A few projectiles could go through the shield, like Sword's secondary or Slingshot's secondary, but it blocks a good amount of projectiles, helping you play both defensively and offensively against the ranged classes. Pressing E again when the shield is up launches it forward, destroying the shield, but anyone hit by the shield takes small damage and gets knocked back a bit, which can make it a way to get enemies off of you or to attempt a kill in a pit like in Bandlands. However, this is pretty unreliable. Boombox's finisher is Raining Tacos. Boombox goes flying up after a long windup and then hits the ground, giving himself and nearby teammates 250 shield that only starts decaying after 3 seconds, 75% haste that lasts for around 3 seconds, and does moderate damage to opponents. It's mostly effective for trying to survive tight situations or to simply get the team momentum back in your favor thanks to the shield and haste offering hyper offensive pushes for a couple of seconds. It's also highly advised to use this at adequate health since you are vulnerable for a while trying to even launch the finisher in the first place, so be warned with that. Boombox, whenever in team or 1v1 scenarios, doesn't match as well with most of the characters as before. In terms of 1v1 and team scenarios, he can have an easy time with Biograph, Hyper Laser, and Sword, as he can wear down Biograph's glass cannon HP, Hyper Laser's bad close range options unless the Hyper Laser is great at the game, and Sword's lack of range. He can also put pressure on Skateboard unless he is on board, which then Boombox has to either hope the skate can mess up or use his finisher to attempt to force skate off board. Every other character is not so kind to Boombox, unfortunately. Some characters like Rocket, Shuriken, Medkit, and Slingshot can simply disengage with a Boombox effortlessly due to their mobility options, unless the Boombox really wastes time trying to go for them in the first place, and Sling can also penetrate his E ability with his secondary and finisher. However, Sudspace and Katana are probably his worst matchups. Sudspace can be pushed up on, but a Sudspace could annoy a Boombox heavily by spamming his secondary, or even using Boombox's shield as a way to poison nearby teammates who are in the range of the Sudspace primary. Katana, however, absolutely decimates Boombox in every single possible way. As a Boombox, you must never try to engage with a Katana, and if they grapple you, try to knock them back and have enough time and haste to get away from him before looming misfortune leads you to your death. Hey, post-editing Nico here. I decided to compile a tier list of the matchups here. You can pause and look at it, but it's pretty simple to understand when it comes to what matchups Boombox can normally win. So yeah, this pretty much reflects my thoughts exactly. Sometimes the speed boost of your primary isn't necessary. Simple enough to understand. Sometimes the haste isn't necessary, but the charge always is. Always try to use your secondary around teammates with 4 charges. 50 shield can do a lot, and along with the 40% haste, it's always good to use the secondary at 4 charges. Always try to hit enemies with Q as soon as you can. General damage tool, great for anything really. Keep your E shield up if there's no pits to use or tons of ranged classes. 300 HP shield basically means it can almost never break from normal means, so keep it up as long as you can if any of this happens. Sometimes singling out targets is good. If a Biograph or Sword is causing massive trouble, single them out as Boombox and force them in a 1v1, since they mostly lose to you. Sometimes try to force low health enemies in 1v1s. Their haste might actually help you catch up to low health targets to finish them off. Really effective on Annihilate. Always avoid Katana. I said this in matchups, but I need to restate it. Katana is beyond a dangerous threat. Now that we went through all of that, let's take a look at some gameplay to see what Boombox can really do in a match. Just like last time, I'll be showing off gameplay that could somewhat represent what I have talked about up to this point. And also, I am not the best Boombox ever. So, enjoy! Before this video ends, I'd like to give a quick thanks to 3 people in particular. First is my friend Sunny. They actually decided to make the thumbnail for this video and was overall an amazing friend while I was working on this, so huge thanks to them, and their Twitter is in the description. And the other person I'd like to thank is obviously Quartz for being the main inspiration for these types of videos in the first place. Huge shout outs to them as well, and their channel's in the description. But lastly, I want to thank you guys. You guys were even motivating me to make a whole new guide for this damned character after all the changes and mistakes the original video had. Without you guys, this video would not exist. It's 12 AM right now, so I am sorry for sounding a little tired, but I cannot thank all of you enough for this support. And with that said, have a good day, people.